Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Greg Aldrich, research professor here in grain science and industry. And also I have an opportunity to be the pet food program coordinator and instructor for this course. Joining me is Miss Amanda Dainton. Amanda is a PhD candidate in our laboratory, and she has extensive experience in this area of canning. Specifically for our exercise today, we're going to be exploring canning of a pate or loaf-style dog or cat food. This all starts with the accumulation of all of the key ingredients, and once we get those ingredients together, we'll go through a process of mixing and bringing the temperature up to what we would in the industry call a drop temperature. That's usually about 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. Once the material is completely mixed and brought up to temperature, then we'll take that material and place it into the cans. Once the cans are filled, we'll put them through a seamer to put the lid hermetically onto the can, the lid of the can onto the body of the can, and then from that hermetically sealed can, we'll place those into a retort. So we have three basic functions today: the mixing and heating, the seaming of the can, and then the retort cooking process. To begin with, I'm going to put my PPE on, and we'll start to work with Amanda here in bringing together the key ingredients in this formula. I'm going to go to my cheat sheet here to help me out. So first up are the ground chicken. Can you kind of pick that up, Amanda, and show the group what we've done? So we've taken chicken material that would otherwise be mechanically separated meats. We've allowed it to temper and then ground it finely through a hamburger grinder. Of course, the next biggest ingredient in a canned food is typically water, and Amanda's already placed that into the stock pot and brought the temperature up so that it speeds our process along. The next ingredient that we'll be including into this formula or recipe is white rice, and Amanda will grab that and give you a quick show. So it's the same kind of white rice that you might find at home. We're also including in this frozen peas and carrots. There she has an example, and so that we can show some inclusions into the product. Dehydrated potatoes, so those will rehydrate during the process. This formula also includes spray-dried egg, canola oil, which is just a white cooking oil or vegetable oil, potassium chloride, which is a source of potassium, and it's also necessary for helping us to activate. The potassium helps us activate the guar and the carrageenan, which thereby follows guar and carrageenan. And these are the gelling agent that helps give the loaf integrity. That's the carrageenan. And the guar, which gives it thickness. And the thickness is what we need to help in the filling, so we get uniformity throughout the can. Next and last would be the vitamin and the trace mineral premix. And that's what's helping us to make the formula nutritionally complete and balanced. So those are the key ingredients. Amanda, if you would, please start to add those into the water, and we'll start bringing the temperature up so that we can get everything mixed and activated. Now that the meat's been added to the stock pot, which would in a manufacturing facility would be a full-size mixer, probably carrying somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 pounds of this batter that we're trying to mix. And most industrial-sized mixers are going to have a heat jacket, or we would use direct injection of steam into the process. So you're going to bring that up to temperature here over the next few minutes, and once the temperature starts to get to the critical point, we'll begin to add the rest of the ingredients, the dry ingredients. One of the tricks to adding the dry ingredients is making sure that we get good uniform dispersion, especially for some of those powdered products, because they can start to clump. And so we want to make sure that we don't have lots of clumping as we mix those materials into the recipe. So while Amanda continues to mix, I'm going to begin adding some of the dry ingredients. The first in will be the potassium chloride. Again, it's a source of potassium nutritionally, but it's also going to help us with the activation of our gums and gels. So I'm going to add those in slowly. We're going to add in the white rice. I'll turn that around. So this is uncooked white rice, and it will plump up and hydrate while it's in the retort process. The key thing is that we have to add the things like the guar gum and the carrageenan, and guar specifically, so that the rice doesn't fall to the bottom of the can. Next up, I'll add the trace mineral premix, and you can see here that it's a very small amount. So we have to make sure that we get that dispersed evenly through the mixing process. In a commercial facility, we'd be adding these items possibly through a tri-blender or some other mixing apparatus so that we get a lot of uniformity in its dispersion and mixing. And next I'll add the spray-dried egg. The spray-dried egg is where we can start to see some clumping, and so Amanda's grabbing a whisk. In this case, we're going to give a little bit more shear or mixing to the material as we add that into the formula. All right, hopefully I didn't clump it too much there. Are you ready for the carrageenan, Amanda?
Give me just a second, Dr. Aldrich, to make sure the egg is evenly distributed.
Thank you. I will move on your instruction. Okay. First up, I'm going to add the carrageenan. That's the material that's going to help us with the gelling, so that gives it structure after the retort process. Carrageenan, kappa carrageenan, does not melt after it gets warm. So unlike something like gelatin that's thermal reversible, we usually use something like kappa carrageenan, xanthan gum, or others that will continue to remain as a gel even when the material gets a little bit warmer. These are usually included at fairly low amounts, around 0.5 to 1%. So they're very effective at their job. So now we're getting ready to add the guar gum, and I'll try to put it in there ever so gently so that Amanda can really get it dispersed well. We're powdering that in. Again, this would be a good application in a factory for a tri-blender to mix this with high amounts or copious amounts of water prior to being included into the batter. Once that goes in, it starts to get thick, and we should be able to see here in a moment how much thicker it's become. Again, that helps us with the dispersion of the material. In other words, when we have particulate matter in the formula and we let it sit for any period of time, such as in the bottom of in a can before it goes through the cooking process in the retort, the heavier material could float to the bottom, and these thickeners like guar gum help to keep that dispersed throughout the column. All right, so for the very last step here in the mixing process, we're going to add our visual inclusions. First, we're going to add the dehydrated potatoes. They'll begin to start absorbing the moisture, but again, most of that absorption or rehydration is going to occur once it gets into the retort. Finally, I'm going to add the frozen peas and carrots, so we have that other visual appeal to the product, and we've included those in. Amanda's going to give it that final mix, double check the temperature, make sure that we're on our drop temperature, and then we'll begin to fill the cans. We're at about 45, and so climbing. So I think we are at 50. So we're ready to go to the canning process.
Okay.
Now in a factory, we're going to take this material and drop it out of the bottom of a mixer with a slide gate, and it'll go over to a pumping system, and the pumping system is going to take it over to the filler. The filler is a highly automated piece of machinery. For us in the laboratory, being able to demonstrate to you some of the units or the various steps in the process, we're going to use a funnel and a scoop to evaluate or to fill those cans. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. So we'll just do this ever so quickly. We could take it off the hot plate, but I think we're restricted on space here. So I'm going to do this by guess. Normally in the facility we would have, that's what one looks like. So we'll fill these quickly. In the facility, this is automated again, and so cans are coming into the filler, and the food has been pumped over into the bowl on the filler, and they're filled volumetrically, but we sell the product by weight. And so generally speaking, we try to get within about 1/8 to a 1/16 inch of the top, so that we can, that's 3 to 5 millimeters, so that we can form the right kind of seal and vacuum into the can as it's being seamed. We're just about there. We'll make one more can. You turned the heat off, did you?
It's off, Dr. Aldrich.
Thank you, Amanda. You're very efficient at this. All right, why don't you tip that a little bit, so we can get everything out and get that last can to fill. Okay. That's pretty close. We'll just set those aside now and come this way. So there we have it, 4 cans of a loaf style pet food ready to go to the scene. In the factory, from the filler bowl, the cans will have been filled up to a certain level, either by volume or by weight, mostly by volume. And from there, the cans are whisked over to a seamer. The seamer is, in essence, a machine that's simply going to take the lid and place it onto the body of the can. And the lid is going to have a rubber gasket in here and then a hook. The body of the can, this is the wall, will also have a hook on it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a little bit of an edge. What we're going to do is place that lid onto the can, and then this machine with a chuck is going to roll around that twice. The first time it's going to cause a connection between the can and the lid, and the second time around it's going to further crease that so that we have a good seal. The idea here is to create a hermetic seal so that organisms, things like Clostridium botulinum, can't come into the can from the outside, and also that we don't get oxygen or other spoilage happening inside the can. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to place this onto the seamer. Make sure that everything's aligned, and then going to join the can and lid up to the chuck, and it'll kick into gear and it'll go around twice to create that seam. Once completed, the can is now sealed on top of that, the lid's sealed on top of that can, and we have a nice uniform seal all the way around. And that's important for the next step in the process, commercial sterilization. Okay, so out of the seamer, we have cans now filled and seamed, and they're ready to go into the retort. The retort that we have in the research laboratory is called a still retort. It's a vertical, and so we'll place these down inside the basket, and once we get the retort filled, then we will have an opportunity to turn the retort on and begin the process of sterilization or commercial sterilization. Those cans will be in there for approximately 1 hour, at which time the temperature will come up. The material inside will cook all the way to the interior of the loaf, and the loaf will start to form a structure. At some point, when we've identified that we've gotten to the end point, we'll turn the machine off and allow the contents to cool, and then we can pull the cans out, and they should be commercially sterilized and ready for feeding studies. Thank you.